Good evening, everybody, and we are in for a treat. But before we get there, thank you, Brianna, and also a big shout out to our producer, as always, this month, John Ivory, because this month's guest has been mentoring John in a secret objective goal of his, which most of you will figure out by the end of the session. And he found this incredible wordster, punster, lady of great wit, who we are going to talk to tonight, and I'm excited about this. And so without further ado, and I've been practicing how to say this, I'd like to introduce Tara Lazar. Come on in.
Hello.
Hello.
You've gotten it right.
I got it right.
That's
because Tara the "a" in Tara rhymes with flat cat, right?
Well, I guess so. Flat cat, cat. Yeah, see, I tease you because sometimes people say Tara,
right?
Tara, and sometimes people say Tara. So I taught Rick here to say Tara, like you're tap dancing.
Like you're tap dancing. That's right. That's right. So I worked on it. I got it right. So we're off to a good start. Thank you very much.
Excellent start.
Excellent start. Excellent start. And Tara is here because she is a pretty amazing author of children's books. And since 2010 has been living with MS. And as many of you know, we have at AnCan a really active MS group and some incredible MS moderators. And so I know a little bit about MS. I know a lot more about MS now than I did a couple of years ago before we started the group. And we're going to sort of delve around a little bit and see if these two issues play in together in some way or another, which I think they might, but we'll find out. But I want to start earlier than that with your athletic prowess as a young woman. Tell us, because this was real dedication. Let's tell the audience what no, it had to be, because I am pretty athletic, and to get to the level that you got to must have meant hours and hours of practice. Go ahead and explain what we're talking about.
We are talking about, I used to be a competitive figure skater. Who knew? Like right now with MS, I have better balance than nobody. But as a figure skater, I had better balance than 99% of the, people in the world. But now I got nothing. Right. But I learned how to skate when I was 5 years old. My father was looking in the local paper, and we had an arena in our town. And he said, "Oh, look, it has lessons at the arena. It says, in order to sign up for lessons, you need to know how to skate across the ice. Can you skate across the ice?" I was 5 years old. He should know whether or not I can skate across the ice, right? And I said, yes, of course I can skate across the ice. Could I skate across the ice at that point? No, absolutely not. So we go for the first lesson, and I get skates on, and he even bought me new skates. Like, we weren't going to rent skates. He bought me new skates. I get them on. I step on the ice. I immediately fall down. Immediately, right on my tush. And then I get up again and I immediately fall down. And there was a skate guard who saw me, and I was really upset that I couldn't join the lesson. I was really excited to learn, but I couldn't skate across the ice. And so she told my father, stay past the lessons, and then there's a public session, and during the public session I'll teach her how to skate. And that's exactly what she did. I learned in one day. And I went back to take lessons, and I took lessons for a long time until it was time to get a coach. And then the coach said, bring her at 5:30 a.m. And my dad said, no way. And that was the end of my skating. So I went back as a young woman after I started working and earning my own money. And I went back and I relearned everything, and I started competing in the adult structure for figure skating. So so I did that until I had my kids in my early 30s. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. Now, figure skating ties in very, very well with what we're going to read about, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, well, we changed
7, 8, 9.
Oh, 7, 8, 9. Oh, well, originally I said to John, who is the producer, I said, I'll read Little Red Gliding Hood.
Yeah.
Because instead of Little Red Riding Hood, I changed it to gliding, and I made her a figure skater.
Oh, right.
But he was a fan of my book 7, 8, 9, so he really wanted me to read that one. So that's the one I'm going to read tonight.
Okay, but it ties right into figure skating, right? We're talking about figures, aren't we?
Oh, well, I guess so. Groan.
So that's okay. We can do a lot of groaning tonight. You were diagnosed with MS 12, 13 years ago, is that right?
Let's see, so 2010, so like 13 years ago now.
13 years ago. Were you one of these people where you had the symptoms for a long, long time and they couldn't diagnose this, or how did your diagnosis come about, Tara?
I never had a symptom of MS. It's certainly not through my figure skating years, and certainly not through my 30s, until it was October 2009. It was Halloween, and I went trick-or-treating with my kids, and I slipped on some wet leaves because, it's October, you're going to have wet leaves. And I sprained my ankle. But, everybody in my family was used to this because I sprained my ankle a lot. It just figure skating made them looser. I don't know what happened, but I sprained my ankle a lot. And so, I went home, put my foot up. And then I can't remember if it's the next day or a couple days, I woke up and half my foot was numb. And I was like, oh, that's very strange. Now, it was the same ankle that I had broken several years ago ice skating, and I had to have surgery to repair it. So I thought I may have gotten a nerve caught on one of the screws or something, and it was causing the numbness in my foot. So I called my doctor, my orthopedist, and I said, I can't feel half my foot. And they said, the next appointment is in 3 weeks. And I'm like, man, 3 weeks? I can't wait 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But I decided, okay, forget it. It'll get better on its own. It's fine. And then a couple of days later, my whole foot was numb. And then I started to get worried. And then the next day, I think my right foot went numb. And I was like, okay, this has nothing to do with my ankle surgery. There is something seriously wrong. So that's when I started to see a neurologist, and they did every test in the book. And I think the final thing, I had an MRI and I had a spinal tap. And then they diagnosed me with MS. And as people with MS know, when they first diagnose you, they diagnose you as relapsing, remitting MS. So they had told me, oh, the numbness is going to go away. You're going to get better. You're going to feel your feet again. You're going to go back to almost normal. And that never happened. I never went back to almost normal.
Wow.
And it's a clinical diagnosis over a period of years that they realized you never remitted and you just keep getting worse. So then they diagnose you with primary progressive. And also it's a hint when you get MS diagnosed later in life, like not in your 20s, but I was 39, 40.
Right.
Later in life, it's typically primary progressive. So that is what I have, primary progressive MS, one of the lucky ones, the rarest kind.
Well, somehow or other, and we'll talk about this after your reading, you found your way into children's books. And what we're going to hear, first of all, is a kiddie's crime thriller, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
It is. And the title of the book is 789, except it's 7, 8,
9.
Munch, 9.
Right, exactly. Because there's the joke. Why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9.
And with that, let's hear 7, 8, 9, and then we'll talk some more.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. The first thing I'm going to show is, and I don't see it. Oh, of course, Tara, you don't see it. Hang on one second. Oh, bear with me, folks. This is live. But I want to show you first the cover of the book. So I'm going to share that first. And share my screen. Hello, screen share. Is it showing the cover of my book?
Yes.
7, 8, 9. There it is. So I wanted to show you the cover first. It's really interesting. The cover, you would think, is the first thing that would be made for a book, but it's not. It's actually the very last step in making a picture book. So what's interesting here is that Ross, the illustrator, had already determined that the number 7 would be orange, this kind of like bright orange color. But the editor and the book designer wanted the cover to be red. And, we didn't feel like 7 was really going to stand out being bright orange on a red background. But here we are. Somehow they managed it. They kind of put a glow around 7. And so it works. Who knew? But we couldn't change 7 to be another color because he had already illustrated the entire book. So that's something interesting that happens with picture books. And something else I want to show you. I'm going to share my screen again. And here we go. Share screen. And can you see this now? This is something. Now, a picture book is very special because a picture book, and I didn't know this until I started writing them, but a picture book is 32 pages long. Every picture, well, almost every picture book you pick up is going to be 32 pages long. Now, this didn't happen because some university did some deep research study to show that children who are 4, 5, and 6 years old could only pay attention to 32 pages before they got all antsy and didn't want to read the book with the mom and dad anymore. No, that didn't happen. A picture book is actually 32 pages because a printed signature, it's called, is a very large piece of paper onto which they can print 16 pages of a book. And the way they cut it and fold it, if you use two of them, 16 and 16 is 32, it's 32 pages. So a picture book is 32 pages because it's two printing signatures, not because, you know, kids pay attention that time span. But I always thought that was interesting when I first started writing and learned that. Also interesting, I want you, when you pick up a children's book, to open it up and look at the papers that are pasted down next to the cover. In most picture books, you'll pick them up and there'll just be colored pieces of paper that kind of look like construction paper. They'll just be purple or blue or even yellow or boring like white. But every once in a while, you'll get illustrated end papers. That's very special because they were actually able to print more of the printed book block, the signature, and it actually contained the end papers. So every once in a while you get lucky and you get end papers. Now, my book, 789, I was told would have end papers, but I wasn't told this until the very end. Ross had finished illustrating the book, and the editor and Ross were trying to brainstorm, well, what are we going to do for the end papers? And my editor said, well, this is a whodunit, so maybe we have wanted posters as the end papers. And I'm like, when Ross told me this, and we weren't supposed to be communicating, I'll get into that later, but usually the author and the illustrator do not communicate with one another while making the book. But Ross texted me and he said, they want there to be wanted posters. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense because this story does not take place in the Wild West. It takes place in a city. So both of us nixed that idea. The next suggestion was to do a police lineup. You know, like when they gather perpetrators together and they put them against the wall and see how tall they are. And we're like, well, this doesn't involve any police, this story, and it doesn't involve, you know, any police lineup. So we nixed that idea. Then we thought about it some more, and this story features a private eye. He's the letter I. So he's a private detective, and what do private detectives do when they're thinking about how to solve a crime or solve a case? Well, they make a bulletin board. It's kind of like a vision board, and they post up pictures of maps and clues and Polaroids of the suspects and all the characters. So that's what we did. Ross came up with the little Polaroids, and I came up with the captions underneath the Polaroids. As you can see in this book, 789, 7 is the prime suspect. Grown. Yeah, it's so this book is actually full of puns. So let's get started and start reading the book. I'm going to share my screen yet again. And here we go. And we're pulling up 789, The Untold Story. I was dozing in my chair when an urgent banging on my office door bolted me awake. It was 6. Something had scared the pants off him. And if you look at 6 here, he's not wearing pants. Okay. The kids always get a kick out of that. 7 is coming to get me, said 6. As a private eye, I'm used to his type. Numbers. They're always stuck in a problem. But I knew about this 7 fella. He was odd. Take it easy, 6, I said. What's 7 up to? Word on the street is that 789 Now it's after me. Well, technically, he's always after you. There's 5, then 6, then 7. See? That's it. I told 6 not to panic. Stay here. I'll get to the root of this. I hope so. I fear my days are numbered. Groan. First, I went looking for 8. She's usually caught between 7 and 9. I found her at the corner of 2nd Avenue and 4th Street. And you know why she's on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 4th Street, don't you? The multiplication table right there. 2 times 4 equals 8. Very clever. But 8 knew nothing. Nada. Zilch.
If it's true, 8 said, then I'm next in line.
In a flash, she took off her belt. Now 8 looked just like 0. Good disguise. I needed a solid lead. I strolled into Cafe Uno, leaned on the counter, and ordered a slice of pie. B, the waitress, had the scoop.
Yeah, I heard 7, 8, 9,
she said. So you haven't seen 9 around, I asked.
Negative,
said B.
he just disappeared.
And this evening, the letter B is played by Cyndi Lauper. Yes, thank you. So 9 was gone. I couldn't let 7 be the one who got away, but I needed more data. I went to see 11. She and 7 are like 2 peas in a pod.
7 couldn't have done it,
said 11. He's on vacation. Are you sure? I prodded. Positive. I saw him leave. But if 7 was gone, then where was 9? It didn't add up. Frustrated, I headed back uptown. But that's when I saw him crossing the street. Finally, I put 2 and 2 together. I had to get back to the office. On the double, I told the driver. I busted through my office door and found 6 taking 40 winks. I have solved this numerical nonsense, I cried. I grabbed 6 and turned him upside down. Just as I suspected, my client 6 was really 9. You had everyone worried, 9, I said. Why did you say that 7, 8, 9?
Because 7 gets all the attention. Lucky 7. 7 wonders of the world. Snow White and the 7 dwarfs.
Figures. 9 felt like he didn't measure up.
7, 7, 7. It's like I don't even exist. Hurry right past me on their way to 10. And don't even get me started on 10. Everyone thinks he's perfect.
I zeroed in on 9. Are you kidding? You should be on cloud 9 right now. Happy as can be, the whole 9 yards.
How come?
Asked 9. Because you've got 9 lives. That's when 11 showed up.
Look who's back,
she said. It was 7.
Stammered 9. No hard feelings, 7, old pal? Sure, let's not be
Divided, 7 said. Fist bump.
7 seemed awfully pleased for a number who had been framed. "Oh, why so happy, 7?" I asked. "I just sailed the 7 seas. I'm in 7th heaven." Ah. At last, everyone was back in order, and now I could take letter cases again. Upper cases, lower cases. Letters can be wordy at times, but they're a-okay in my book. The next day, while dozing in my chair, my phone bolted me awake. I'd recognize her voice anywhere. It was two, with another problem to solve. Ugh, I've really got to change my number. And that, boys and girls, is the end.
Well, I'm wondering if the audience figured it all out.
I don't know.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I literally grew up on puns. So I mean,
I love a good pun.
yes, I literally did, but that's another story, and we won't talk about that now, another time. But I'm very curious. When did you first start writing kids' books? Before your MS?
Yeah, it's something I had always wanted to do my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
From the time I was like in 2nd grade and we started
Oh,
writing
really?
creative writing stories. Yeah, I mean, it was something I really enjoyed doing. And so when I got out of college, I tried to get a job in children's publishing. I figured, well, I'll learn everything from the inside out. So I'll learn how publishing works and then I'll write books. I didn't get a job in children's publishing. I got a job in professional technical computer reference books. Yeah, it was a far cry
Okay.
children's books. So I spent a long time working in high tech. I didn't stay in traditional publishing for long because unbeknownst to me, it doesn't pay very well. So I moved into high tech, into telecommunications, and I had a long career, decade-long career. And then after I got married and started having kids, I was like, well, I'm gonna be a stay-at-home parent. So, I have time now to pursue it. And since I was reading to my daughters all these picture books, I was like, yeah, I can do this. And this is what I always wanted to do. So when my youngest daughter was about 1, so that was, oops, sorry, that was my computer. But when my youngest daughter was about 1, which was the end of 2007, is when I really started in earnest to write. I joined a writing critique group. And I started attending conferences and events to learn more about writing for children. So it was right about the time that I was diagnosed with MS that I also finally got my agent and sold my first book. So it was a very conflicted time for me. On one hand, I had reached a lifelong goal, and on the other hand, I was very, very sick. And now, I had this chronic illness. So it was a very conflicted time for me.
Now, do you think that being diagnosed with a chronic illness changed how you wrote and how you approached writing?
Well, I got to sit a lot more.
Yes.
That's great for writing, right? You don't need to walk around. You don't need to walk around to write. So it didn't really change anything. It just I kept the MS diagnosis hidden for a couple of years because I thought, well, nobody is going to want to work with me if I have MS.
they are maybe going to think that I can't complete the work, or, they're going to have some preconceived notions about dealing with me that is going to destroy any career. So I'm going to keep it secret for a while. And then I realized, no, I don't need to keep it secret.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Yeah.
that's going to stop me from doing this work, because I can sit all day.
Yeah. And do you think that that finding this creative expression, I mean, yeah, the figure skating was creative expression, of course, but this is a different type of creative expression. Do you think that the creative expression helped you in any way deal with your MS?
Well, I mean, it kept my brain busy, right? It kept
Yes,
the
important.
cognitive part of my brain busy. And luckily, that is not how MS manifested itself in me. Some people who get MS do have cognitive disabilities, but
Yeah.
mine are all mobility related. So luckily, I could still use my brain and focus on creativity and writing stories and everything. And, my MS didn't affect it, but it just kept me engaged intellectually, which is always good. It's always good to be engaged intellectually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what really helped me.
So tell us a little bit about the second story you're going to read to us.
Well, we decided I wouldn't read a second story per se, but I
Okay.
would share another one of my books. I wrote a book called Absurd Words. Okay, because and we're talking again about being engaged intellectually, right?
Mhm.
I read a lot, and any writer has to read a lot. It keeps your writing sharp, and you identify what it is that is good writing when you read a lot. So every time I came across an odd word, or just a wonderful word that, tripped off the tongue, was wonderful to say, I would write it down. And the internet loves lists. They really do. So after a while, I had 200 of these words written down, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to throw them up on my website. See what happens. See if other people are going to like these words. So that's what I did. I threw them up on my website, and that page of all these crazy words became the #1 access page on my website. And so
Tell us your website whilst we're here.
It's taralazar.com. And if you search into Google just fun words for kids, or cool words for kids, or absurd words, you will find that particular page. But I threw it up on my website, became the #1 access page. So I had an idea that, okay, other people like these fun and crazy words. And I pitched to my literary agent, hey, what if I write a book with these words in it, a book for kids? And she liked the idea. Although, in the beginning, it was like, well, I was going to make like a dictionary of these words. And what's really, really difficult is, how are you going to make a child read a dictionary? That's not really interesting, right?
Yeah.
So I came up with absurd words, and for a while I was like, how am I going to organize this book? Because nobody wants to read a dictionary from A to Z. And so my editor and I came up with these word squads. We grouped words into categories, so that if there was a category that a kid was interested in, like goat, greatest of all time, we could put all the words that had to do with being outstanding or #1 or any kind of superlative in that group of words, and the kids could go directly to that section and read that section. And with those words, I also researched some of the history behind the words. So I thought it would be fun to read a few of the historical things about these words. Of course, let me see if I can go to, okay, I'm going to find bazooka. Isn't that a great word, bazooka?
Yeah, we love that word.
Okay, now what's interesting about, I found out about bazooka, what's really interesting is the history. It's been used from 1930 till now in 3 different ways. So I'm going to read this pop culture reference that I wrote up for you about bazooka. Comedian Bob Burns entertained in the 1930s and 40s with a long trumpet-like kazoo he made from a pipe and called a bazooka. Now, he called it a bazooka because the Dutch word bazoen means trumpet, and then he tacked on the ka from kazoo. So he came up with his own word, bazooka, and that was the name of this musical instrument he entertained crowds with. Now, when the military invented the rocket launcher, it looked just like Bob Burns's instrument, so that's what they named it, a bazooka. So we go from an instrument to a rocket launcher.
Wow.
Now, then bazooka bubblegum was introduced in 1947, shortly after the end of World War II. And it was named after the rocket launcher that was used during World War II that was called the bazooka. And if we remember bazooka bubblegum, I think it's still out there today. It was packaged in a red, white, and blue wrapper, and it came with a little comic, and it was meant to instill patriotism in the United States.
And let me just say that it's one of the reasons I'm here today, because as a little kid in England, we got bazooka bubblegum, and it really was one of the things that caused, for me, a lot of intrigue in the United States. And, you know, it was,
there you go.
It was just a fascinating aspect of American culture when I was 6 or 7 years old.
So then bazooka bubblegum creates really big bubbles to pop, and they go bang. There's a big bang. And that's why they named the bubblegum bazooka after the rocket launcher, because the rocket launcher also made a big bang.
Wow.
So
okay, cool.
That was kind of like the evolution of the word bazooka.
Right.
So I have these interesting tidbits that are sprinkled throughout the book. So that's what makes it interesting to read. It's not just an A to Z dictionary. It's packaged into word groups. And this one that it was in, let's see which one this went. Off to battle. So these are all words about battle. Blitzkrieg, skirmish, catapult, pugnacious, fisticuff, bazooka, fracas, Donnybrook. All these words that are in this section are about that. And then I sprinkle in these interesting facts. So I also one of my favorite words also is fiasco. And I want to tell you about, let's go to the next. Fiasco is in the what a zoo category for all things rowdy, loud, and chaotic. But my favorite story about how the word fiasco came into the English language was that it was, let's read this one. The word fiasco in Italian means bottle, which is a far cry from its meaning in English, right? There have been many explanations about why and how this happened, but the favorite story I have is that about 200 years ago, glass blowers in Venice were responsible for making expensive vases and glass sculptures. But as you know, blowing glass isn't easy and things break a lot, right? So any damaged and used glass, that broke they would put it aside and save it to make cheap bottles for everyday use. So therefore, every fiasco came out of a failed work of art. And that is how we got the word fiasco. It means bottle in Italian, from all those failed bottles that glass blowers made.
Oh, yeah. How
So,
cool is
yeah.
that?
So this book is filled with those kinds of little, stories about words, and like there's lots of great words. Helter
Give us
skelter.
give us one more of your favorites, and then
One more. Okay.
one more. And audience, if you're out there and you've got any questions for Tara, please put them in the chat window, and we'll ask them. But give us one more, and then we'll
One
talk
more.
about
Well, we'll do this one since you are British.
Yeah,
While American,
I was British.
you were British.
Yes.
While Americans can understand British people and they can understand us as long as our accents aren't too intense,
Yeah.
our language is not exactly the same. The Brits have slang that we don't use, like chuffed to bits. I love that phrase. It
Yes.
means to be extremely pleased. You must be
Yeah.
chuffed to know the
Yeah.
word chuffed now. But in England, they use the word hodgepodge, or
Yeah.
a hodgepodge, instead of what
Yeah.
we use is hodgepodge, where besides meaning an assorted jumble of things, it's also a stew of mutton and vegetables. Hodgepodge instead of hodgepodge. So yeah, that's I love, the differences between English and American English and British English. It's fun to explore those two.
So, the funny thing when you say that is I've been here 50 years. It's hard to believe, but it'll be 50 years in August that I came to this country. And I will still use words that are English words and not realize that I'm using them. Like chuff. Chuff's a really good one. I mean, I might
Chuffed
say,
is
oh,
really
I'm chuffed
good.
about that, right? And then when I get that vacant look from the other person and their eyes sort of go,
They don't watch enough British TV.
That's right. And I suddenly realized, oh, that's not a, oh.
That's
and
not
I
a thing
still
in
do it.
America.
I still do it. Now, I want to ask you about your next project coming up. And tell us a little bit about the next project coming up.
My next project is called Flat Cat. And if you give me a moment, I can pull up the cover for that one.
Oh, nice.
Sure, you want to see it. Now,
Yeah.
this book is illustrated by Pete Oswald. He's a New York Times #1 best-selling illustrator. So it's kind of exciting to do a book with him. I mean, every illustrator that I work with is just phenomenal, but like, it's really special to work with somebody who's made the New York Times bestseller list, right? It's kind of like a dream come true. So I'm going to share my screen and show you the cover of Flat Cat. Here we go. It's coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And there he is.
Yeah.
He is a cool cat. And when I first, came up with Flat Cat, it was really like I came up with the name because I was, playing with the words, and I just thought Flat Cat was fun to say, and it was something I hadn't heard before. And when I thought about it, I was like, how the heck is Flat Cat gonna be illustrated? Like, I couldn't figure it out, like, because a book is 2D and Flat Cat is 2D. So how are we going to show that he didn't have this third dimension? But he did it. He made this little flat edge along Flat Cat.
Yeah.
Made him curve, and so we can see that we have a definite Flat Cat. So That book is coming out in September. So that
Oh,
is
cool.
my next project.
And I bet he can squeak through after those Mises. I bet he can. I can't wait to read it, but I bet he can. I bet that I have a feeling that might have something to do with it. Now, do you test out your books on kids? How do you do that? No?
No, I don't. And when my kids were little, it was
Yeah.
so funny. I wrote 7, 8, 9, I think back in 2015 or so. So my kids who are 20 and 16 now, were a lot younger then. And I read it to them, and their reaction was, "Mommy, that book is cheesy." They didn't like it at all.
Uh,
So, they are not a litmus test at all. I feel like, and if you speak to other children's book creators, we feel like we never grew up. I still feel like I'm 8 years old. I still have this sense of humor of an 8-year-old. I still really live in my 8-year-old head. So that's where I pull my humor from. And I've talked to a lot of writers of books for children, and whatever genre they write in, it is typically how old they feel inside. You know, one friend who writes very early picture books, she's like, "Well, I'm 5." And then another friend who writes, middle grade is like, "Oh, I'm 12." We all feel like we got stuck in some age, and that's the age we write for.
So, does that age change, do you think? I mean, could you write for 5-year-olds and then another time you could write for 10-year-olds or...
Some people can do that very well, can switch genres. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, I'm also stuck at 12. I'm around there also because very significant event in my life happened when I was 12. My parents' divorce was final when I was 12. So I remember a lot of things surrounding that time period. I have written middle grade novel, but a novel is too long. I can't write that long. I get lost. It's like being lost in the woods. You're like writing out this plot and this story, and you're like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen. It's very, very hard. Now people have told me the opposite. People who usually write novels told me, well, it's so hard to write a full story in 500 words or less. It's very hard to write short. But I have this natural propensity to write short. When I was in college, I wrote short stories. And I have written a couple of short stories for adults that have been published. So I kind of like the short format. It's what I studied in college, not only, writing it, but also reading a lot of short stories. So I like short. And, maybe one day I'll write a novel, a middle grade novel or a young adult novel, but I'm not rushing to do that right now.
Did you major in creative writing or in literature, or what did you major in?
I went to Rutgers College in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Yes.
And we did not have a creative writing major. We had something called a specialization, whatever that is. You had to take a certain amount of credits in writing, and then you would get the English degree, Bachelor of Arts, and with a creative writing specialization. So I got my specialization, I guess. So.
So I want to go back to something a little earlier, and curious how it influences you, but there was a comment I saw that I think you might have made to John when you first got diagnosed, that you had great concerns about your future in terms of your physical future, and and that there was an element of grief. And I hear that a lot in the support group. Maybe more in the MS support group than I do in any of the other groups that we talk about. And I'm just wondering how that grief has changed in how it manifests itself to you from the time you were diagnosed to now. Is it still there? Are you more comfortable with it? Do you still feel it at all?
Well, when I was first diagnosed, as I said earlier, I was very athletic. I was a figure skater. I loved playing tennis. My husband and I love traveling and hiking in various places. We've been to the Canadian Rockies. We've been to the American Southwest. We've been to Hawaii. We always loved to travel. And my future that I envisioned was going to be more of the same. I was going to be playing tennis well into my 70s. I was going to be, still traveling and hiking various places and doing all this stuff. And I had to come to terms with the fact that that person isn't going to exist. That is not future Tara.
Yeah.
And I told John that it felt like there was a period of mourning for this person who died. It felt like a person died. And there was a long time of mourning. I call it my lost year. It was the year I was diagnosed. It was 2010. It took a good year to get over that sense of loss. Now, I still think about my future and the fact that I'm going to be in a wheelchair, probably sooner than later, and I'm not going to be able to do a lot of things that I would have liked to been able to do. But what I learned is that your life cannot be dictated by worrying about the future, because I had that lost year of 2010. I spent so much time worrying and filled with anxiety that I missed out on the here and now. That entire year, I just don't recall.
Bravo. Right.
Things that happened with my children, things I just don't remember a lick of what happened in 2010. And so that's what I learned. Worrying about the future that you cannot control, there could be a cure by then. I don't know. I could not progress that quick. I don't know. Worrying about the future that you can't control doesn't do anything except give you a lot of anxiety and let you miss out on this time right now, where I'm still walking around, not very much though, but I'm things are good. Things are okay, they're not all doom and gloom. And when the time comes that I need to, I'm telling you, I think I'm going to be relieved when I get in a wheelchair, because I finally don't have to walk places anymore. I mean, walking is like really hard, and it's tired, and it hurts, and it's painful, and it's stressful, and it takes a lot of strength out of me. And I mean, the future is going to come, and we never know what's going to happen in the future. There's no way we can know. So it just pays not to have to worry about it. Just live in the present.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, say that again. Say that again, that last sentence.
Live in the present.
Right. And that is something that comes up in all the groups across the board. Doesn't matter which group it is. But AnCan, we so try to get people to live in the present. I mean, I have a little thing on my like, it's dark in here, so I can't even read it to you, but I have a little saying, maybe I can read it to you because it's worth reading. It says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. And if you're at peace, you're living in the present.
Yeah.
Right?
You really have to live it, because that is all we really have, right? The here and now, right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is just so important. My last question to you is, how have your kids dealt with this diagnosis, and do they get it? Are they supportive? I mean, and your husband too.
My husband is tremendously supportive. My
Yeah,
in-laws are tremendously supportive.
yeah.
My friends are tremendously supportive. My kids, well, I mean, I guess my older daughter who's away at school right now, and she's 20 now and she's older, and I think she kind of gets it a little bit more. But I think my younger child, um, is kind of like she's 16 right now, and everything is me when you're 16, right?
Yeah,
She's not going to worry about me. It's all about, can I drive her, to her friend's house? Can I drive her to this party? Can I pick her up from practice? Can I, it's all about what I can do for her. So
yeah,
I think sometimes she's very annoyed that I'm like this, because, other people's parents are not like this. I, I ask her to do things for me. Like, can you get me a cup of tea? I love tea, but I can't get it myself because I spill it.
right,
Can't
right.
carry it, even if I put it on my walker. When I'm on
Yeah,
my walker, I'm very unsteady as well, so it spills on my walker.
yeah.
And everything I try to do in the house, I always make a mistake. I knock something over and then I can't pick it up. And then, it's just everything is really hard for me to do. So
Yeah,
I try to ask as little as possible, but if it's been like the whole day and I haven't really had my cup of tea and she comes home from school, and I'm like, can I have a cup of tea? And she's like, oh, I just got home from school. Can you just leave me alone a minute? I think
yeah,
my kids, I think, they get more annoyed than anything else. And when they mature a little bit more, they'll realize what it is that I'm dealing with.
yeah. No, I
Oh,
mean, I so get it. I so get it, Tara, because I hear it and I know how difficult. I really get how difficult it is. Listen, our hour is up, and this has
ah,
been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. I've so enjoyed talking to you. I've so enjoyed hearing the story, looking at the words. Can't wait to learn more about Flat Cat. And and I think this recording, which will be out very soon, will get a lot of play. So before I hand back to Brianna, I just want to remind the audience that we at AnCan have great MS groups. We have a virtual art class. Tara was telling me that she doesn't actually have the dexterity in her hand. We have one MSer who uses an application. And we'll have to get you in touch with Karen. We'll put you and Karen in touch
oh,
with
this
each.
right hand is just like,
That's right.
it's
And we
sad.
also no, and we have these wrist supports that they set when we were sending out supplies. We don't have the money for that right now, but we've had that in the past. Anyway, I won't get into that, but we have these great classes. Just look at our website, ancan.org. Don't forget the tip jar. Cannot tell you just yet who our next month's guest is going to be, but I am certain that Mr. Ivory is going to come up with yet another winner. Thank you so much again, Tara, and I will hand back to Brianna.
I've been chuffed to bits. Thank you so much.
Thank you.